Salud.
Salute.
Thanks for joining me, Johnny.
Of course. Oh, yeah. Nice.
The Aloha Warrior.
Yeah.
Fantastic stuff. Well, thanks for joining me, Johnny. Obviously, I invited you here onto my boat. Welcome. Everybody here is familiar with my boat because I film everything on my boat.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to talk to you about how you've been doing because we're 28 now. You're 28, 27?
28 now.
28 now.
Yeah.
And I know you've been doing amazing things with nursing, and you own a home, and you've been as obsessed with finance and personal investment and stuff like that as I am these last couple of years.
Sure.
So I wanted to just go over like your timeline, what you've done, maybe starting in college, and then talking about highs, lows, lessons you've come to learn, and we can get into the rest later, but just your perspective.
Yeah. Well, if we're going to talk about finance and, philosophy, all that kind of stuff, I would say, timeline wise, like it really did start when I was a kid. I was born into a family, like both my parents were from the Philippines.
Yeah.
Moved here in their 20s, didn't have anything. I was born shortly after they came here. And so we never had like a ton. We were pretty modest. And I think that kind of tipped me off on my journey, I guess you can say, for financial freedom, success, whatever you want to call it.
Because you saw it from them.
Yes, was like my own parents' like struggle and accomplishments and hardships and successes that they have had in their lifetime up until now even. So I would say that has been a large influence in my own philosophy when it comes to finances and goals.
And you recognize that pretty early on, or?
I think that started to become more relevant to me in high school.
Oh yeah.
To skip on then,
Sure.
Like grew up as like, parents were always saving money. I was like, oh, like I should do that, and it just kind of
little money lessons.
Yeah. Little money lessons, and always ran down to me. But then I think I became more cognizant in high school when I had started making my own money. It was always like little summer jobs, little, labor here and there, something like that.
Yep.
Help someone paint their house or do their yard work. Again, like summer jobs. So when I started making my own money, I would say that started to like shift my mindset a little more of like, oh, like I can dictate my own destiny in a way, like when it comes to financial goals and responsibility. And
you recognize that in high school?
I recognize that in high school.
Yeah. So really early.
Yeah. So
I feel like most people I talk to only come to that realization maybe by the time they're like 27.
Yeah. So, I'll say, both my parents are nurses.
Yeah.
Both are from the Philippines, very hardworking people. My mom, who is, like I was mentioning, my mom particularly, both have influenced me, my mom and my dad. They have both influenced me in very different ways. My mother has worked for the same hospital for 20 some years. And she has a great retirement plan and like mutual funds and all that jazz. And she'd always make it a point to like kind of mention it to me like, oh, you should work here eventually. I just like put my money into the stock market and this portfolio and I have X amount of dollars now. And as a high schooler, you're like, whoa, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, the consistency.
The consistency, exactly. So the consistency was appealing to me at that age, and the fact that I had access to that. So this kind of segues me into like what kind of got me into maybe some of the finances that I've gone to. It was stocks. Like you can open up a stock account when you're in high school.
When did you open up your first one?
Well, so so my first, like, I guess you could say trading wasn't like a full on stock portfolio. It was this app called Acorns.
Yeah, I know what that is.
And it was really hot.
What's Acorns?
Back in the day. So like, I think it was maybe like 2013, 14, 12, something like that. And I had this really close friend of mine, Ethan, as you know him as well, who also like very financially like-minded. And I think that's like another thing too, is like the people that I had surrounded myself with were also of that mindset. And this guy, Ethan, was like, hey, you should, because we're always like looking at ways to make money and stuff like that. It's like, hey, you should check out this app, Acorns. And his enticement for it though was that like for every person he like signed up, he got like some money or something like that. But it was like, it's a really simple...
I know what he used the money for too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's a really simple concept. It's essentially like this app where you invest, and you have the option. It like links with your bank account or your debit card, and you have the option to say you spend like $2.50 on a bag of chips. It'll be like, would you like to round up your purchase of 50 cents to your acorns? And that just taught you the value of compounding interest, essentially.
And so it would take the money.
But then it would round up all that money, and whatever money you had rounded up or that you directly invested into that portfolio.
Yeah.
It gave you the option to essentially like invest it in like low, moderate, and like high, like yield portfolios. And it was like a mix of like real estate and ETFs and all that stuff, bonds, whatever, S&P 500. So it was like a mutual fund that had varying degrees of risk.
Almost like a target date fund.
Kind of like, exactly. I guess you could say
how risky do you want to be?
Yeah.
That's cool. So you went into college for nursing, right? And you want to do that from the beginning, going into college?
Yeah, like high school, I was like, so like I said, both my parents were nurses, and I was like looking to healthcare, and I think I started volunteering at the hospital and kind of just gave nursing like a good thought. And I was like, well, you know, I like that it's not like a desk job. Like I'm always been kind of really on my feet, and I like
very hands-on.
Yeah. And like I enjoy talking to people and you know, having conversations. And you have that in nursing. And then of course there's like the practical aspect of like, it's high demand, it's good paying, you know,
job security with all the old boomers.
Yeah, exactly. So, got into a nursing program here in San Diego as well. And, I, during that time had worked in a hospital. I got like I had like a job at a nursing home, and then I had a job, the following winter, in like an actual hospital. It was like my first real hospital job. I was a transporter, so I pushed people A to B. It was a very entry level job, but it was like incredible exposure to, you know, people, the hospital, how things flow. Yeah. Because like I'm 20 years old and 19 years old, and it's like
wheeling around hurt people.
Yeah, and you only understand so much of the picture until you know you're exposed, right? So.
Yeah, one thing's on paper and the other one's actually seeing it.
Yeah.
So then you graduate nursing school. What year you graduate?
2020.
2020. Wow. Okay. Like when 2020? Peak COVID or?
Pretty much like, my senior year of nursing school, I was in the middle of doing a preceptorship in the emergency department. And they shut it down like it was like, I think it was like March.
Yep. Yeah, March was when everything
like hard shut down. I was like, got booted out of the hospital. All our classes went to Zoom, but we only had like 2.5 months of school left. Yeah. Until we graduated. Yeah. And I actually had already gotten because of my my job in college, the organization I worked for, still do, is very good to their internal candidates. So, and I had made some connections, and I was able to have a job lined up in February of that.
Oh yeah. So by the time everything was
kind of like starting to like, everything was kind of like teeter a bit. And then like March was like a hard shut off or a hard close. And then by February, I already had a job lined up to start in August.
Okay. Beautiful.
So I was like, yep, like just going to finish the school year. This is kind of crazy. Yeah. You know, see what happens. Like maybe this is just going to fizzle out. Maybe there's going to be a crazy another wave, which is exactly what happened. Was like, I remember like fall that year was like my floor turned into a COVID floor, and I was taking care of 4 to 5, you know, very sick COVID patients. Doing all the donning and doffing and all that. Yeah. So
I don't think I'd ever actually internalized the fact that you went straight into nursing, like right during peak hecticness.
Yeah, it was
probably for the last, I don't know, 100 years, like the most crazy time for medicine.
It's quite the kickoff to,
thinking about it more, maybe that's why you've gotten so much responsibility so quickly. Because, you know, the general theory of the more challenge that one faces.
Yeah.
if you can overcome it, the greater the person becomes in whatever field it is that is. So by overcoming probably the greater challenge of nursing during that time, because not to be a, spoiler alert, but you're a charge nurse now. So there's been some growth in between there, but there's a lot you've been working on.
Like I that is like a huge life philosophy of mine, is like, if you could expose yourself to experiences that promote like your own personal development and character growth, absolutely go for it. I think a lot of people kind of sideline, and that's okay. I mean, like, people are needed in certain positions, but if you feel the calling to achieve more or experience something, try it. The worst thing is going to happen is, like, it doesn't work, and hopefully you can just go back to whatever you were doing previously if that was more comfortable for you.
I was just talking about that with Armando, my older brother, where he was telling me, Gino, like, you're so unique generally about how ambitious you are about career and other stuff, and your friends too, like, it's Johnny, that you are accomplishing so much. And he says, but not everybody, I think, he said, wants that. Like, some people are happy with just the consistency of like a more secure job and the pace that brings, and they kind of channel their energy and we'll call it ambition into other aspects of life, be it hobbies or something else. And they don't quite apply it to professionalism, which I think that's fine generally, but ... That's fine as long as you're okay with the outcomes that brings, right? If you're okay with the financial situation that puts you in, then all's fair in love and war, and you can do what you want. It's a free country, and, live your best life. What I don't appreciate or care for, or I would caution against, is the people that get stuck in the classic system, don't really take on too much challenge. And then when they're 40, 45, 50, the huge wave of regret comes in, right? And they're like, man, if only I'd done this, like, this is a scam. I don't own anything. I'm not gonna be able to retire. And they just turn kind of like grumpy wumpy, right? Like, well, dude, it was within your power. You just chose not to. But we also all know, like, the old doctors or the old engineers, and they're just like the happiest, just going through their vibe, going through their routine.
I would agree with all that.
So how'd you get into being charge nurse? How'd that happen?
So we could fast forward to then. I mean, there was COVID, and I was working on a medical surgical floor, and, I went and worked on, I wanted to, so that floor was designed for new nurses. I spent about a year and some change there, and I knew that there was something else for me outside of that.
Growth,
And
next thing.
I was looking, I was like, emergency room, ICU, like, do I go back to so I had physically moved different hospitals from my job in college to a different hospital, but within the same system. And I was like, what do I do next? I moved back to my old hospital, which is known to be a little bit more rougher in the population. It's more closer to downtown, and deals with different population.
Little poorer, a little more antsy,
versus
more homeless.
The one I was at that time was more geriatric, and is closer to a lot of nursing homes. Just a different population.
Different population,
and that was fine. But I enjoyed my time in college working in that hospital because those people really needed help. And you just see people at that particular hospital in just really dire, crazy situations. And I appreciated that, actually, in working there. And that was one of the reasons I went back to the hospital. So I went back to that hospital. I worked on a trauma floor. So it's like patients that had been stabilized from the trauma bay. Stabs, gunshot wounds, falls, head injuries, that kind of stuff.
Car accidents.
When they were car accidents. When they were stabilized, they would go to that floor. And that was great. It was a very good floor. I learned different things because the care was like more specialized. But I kind of had the calling, I think, always since college, and in my exposure in my college job, to go back to the emergency room. And I had mentioned previously that I had done a preceptorship part of my senior year in the emergency room, and I really enjoyed it. So I had previously applied, had been rejected, and, I find myself 3 years later looking for the next step, or 2 years later. It was about 2 years later after becoming a new nurse, looking for the next step. after being on the medical surgical floor, then the trauma floor, I applied to the emergency department, and I was able to essentially glide in. I had like some good connections down there. I had a friend that really helped me out getting there. And it just, it was, I mean, it still is, it's a great environment to work on for myself, in the way that like it's extremely stimulating. You're always on your feet. You're always thinking quick. And you are really exposed to just like people in their darkest hour, their greatest need. And I enjoy helping people when they need help the most, right?
Yep.
So it's very stimulating, a lot of critical thinking, a lot of humanity, I can say. So I just had been, so that is now 3 years ago now that I started there.
Yep.
And had slowly just bumped my way up the ladder. There's different roles and training that I had obtained over the years until finally they were like, are you interested in doing charge nurse? Which is essentially like, you're like the shift lead or the supervising nurse for like the shift. And a lot of responsibility because, with that comes, I am supervising, at least for like my night crew, up to 14 nurses. I have 7 or 8 ER techs underneath my belt and a couple of patient care assistants. So all have varying roles and varying responsibilities, and to essentially orchestrate the throughput of our patients and, handling the acuity and the issues that come, with those patients is, a big puzzle, and
you never know what's going to come in the door.
But again, like it's gratifying when we do good patient care.
Yeah.
And we do need to be done in order to get that patient to the next place they need to be.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Because that doesn't always happen.
Yeah. I can imagine it can be pretty freaking hard.
Yeah.
So some of the stories you've told me.
Yeah. There's plenty. Yeah. So that's been about just short of a year now that I've been doing that.
Nice. See?
Yeah. So
very cool. And then somewhere along the way, you bought a property that you've been living in. You want to tell us about that?
This is true. So, I'm going to backtrack to my parents again. Like, they had worked very hard to obtain real estate, and as they were going through their careers as nurses as well, and proved very difficult, in what they wanted. Like they wanted us to live in a good area and have access to good public schools.
Yeah.
But of course, like to sustain that on 2 nurses' income, at least for the area they wanted to be in, was like a little over their head.
Stretching it.
They came up with some financial engineering and, of course, just a lot of hard work in order to obtain now 3 or 4 properties in San Diego. And that was a lot of hard work. So, granted though, I saw at the end of the day, through that hard work, through all that struggle, that there is so much value in owning your own property. With rents, of course, it's like you're throwing away that money every month, essentially, unfortunately. And we live in San Diego. I mean, yes, it's beautiful and all, but it's comes with a price.
Yep.
So
a very specific price.
A very specific price. Yeah. A very high price.
Yep.
So home ownership actually since, probably like college had been like a goal of mine.
Yeah.
And we kind of skipped through part of that, but essentially I had from Acorns, I went to TD Ameritrade. From TD Ameritrade, I went to SoFi, and I was just like constantly just like doing research on what stocks to invest in, putting money in, taking money out, where I was trying to just, essentially maximize my portfolio as much as I could. I'd always had made it a point whenever I had a paycheck that I put X amount away. Right. And I think the importance of a lot of this is slow and steady wins the race. Right?
Slow and steady wins the race.
There was a book that my parents used to always read to me. Many of you may know, Tortoise and the Hare.
Yeah.
Yeah. Slow and steady wins the race. Like like I feel like the hare is like, Bitcoin and Tesla and NVIDIA, whatever.
Yeah.
When, of course, like all the stocks are great and have made a lot of people money, but there's something said to like having a diversified portfolio, constantly investing, like taking a percentage of your paychecks, investing that in the stock market, seeing that returns, year over year, where, it just accumulates.
Yeah.
And I had been doing that since high school. And then during COVID, of course, there was all these demand for, nurses and to, for extra shifts and all this stuff, because we just had so many patients and all that. So I was working like 4, 5, 6, 12-hour shifts a week, just picking up overtime as much as I can.
Grind.
Yeah. And so I had graduated from college and, I was thrown right into that environment.
Mm-hmm.
There was all that opportunity for overtime. Plus I had saved all that money in stocks from college and high school. And I had decided to live at home for about 2 years after, it ended up being about 2 years after college.
Yep.
And I just saved a lot of money that way. And like sometimes the stars just align. And if you remember back in, 21, 22, we had fantastic mortgage rates and people were just selling their houses left and right. And you would have to go 10, 15 over asking, but nevertheless, the supply was just crazy.
Yeah.
And, I was literally just perusing as I do, like, a few times a week, I just peruse through Zillow. And I looked at this one property. I was like, oh, this is 5 minutes away from work. Oh, this is kind of like center and close to like a good neighborhood and close to my parents and close to work. And it's in my budget.
Ooh.
And I was like, okay, well, see what we had to do to get this going. And mind you, so like all this stuff was happening with, mortgage rates and people were buying, and it always had been in my mind. I already had preemptively, just having that thought, like maybe I could buy something this year. Had got pre-approved for a loan for
mortgage pre-approval. Yep.
And that property was like you could not view it unless you had like a pre-approved loan. I was like, oh, perfect.
Shows you how crazy those times were, where they like screened tours. Because of the pre-approval, and as much I'm sure COVID and the rest of it,
because everyone was just wanting to buy.
But yeah, I remember those times. It was crazy. I remember talking to you about real estate before you bought your place and talking to you about it and how excited I was too. I ended up going a different way. I moved to Vegas instead of buying a home here, but we were looking at doing the same thing before.
Your career trajectory was a little different back then.
Yeah, it was like, do you want option A or B? And I said, I'll take option Y. It's like, off that way. But that's awesome, man. So what'd you end up getting?
So I ended up getting, 550 square foot condo.
Yeah.
And I only put 5% down.
Woo!
And
let's go.
Yeah, I had essentially saw the property, called the real estate agent.
Yeah.
She's like, I need XYZ documents. Here you go. I saw the property.
Right in.
I was like, okay, I could go. She's like, yeah, there's already like X amount of people looking at it.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, let's put in an offer today. I have the money.
Yeah.
She's like, okay, well, I need you to do XYZ forms. I was like, sure.
Yeah.
Great. She's like, they want X amount more. I was like,
so you didn't have an agent?
No, at the time, no.
Yeah.
I just
it was straight
was
to the
on
seller's
Zillow, just called the agent that was on there.
Yeah.
She happened to be like a quarter Filipina as well. So
there you go, dude.
Shared that.
That helps. Oh, that helps.
Like, hey, let's like
her parents are probably nurses.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like, let's make it work. And I think she was a little bit at the time newer to the real estate game.
Sure.
So she was like really eager and
well, I mean, it's an entry level property, so chances are it's an entry level real estate agent handling it, right? So got me in there, bought it, closed. How long did it take for them to accept the offer once you wrote it in that day?
To accept the offer, I think it was less than a week.
Yeah,
because like everyone just wanted to sell at that time.
Yeah,
it was like less than a week, and then the close, it was like less than a month. Yeah, because I remember like looking at March. I think I looked at that property in April, and then I had the keys in my hand. I was actually just doing some tax stuff the other day. I had the keys in my hand by June.
Nice.
Yeah, so it happened very fast, and I mean, again, like stars align because like you hear in San Diego like, oh, this is like the 10th offer I've put, for It falls out of escrow.
I think I offered like 4 houses before I actually left for Vegas, and they all said no. Yeah.
Yeah. So
2 in Claremont, but
stars align. Yeah.
To the point of though, and I always like to reiterate this with everybody. So we talk about stars aligning and getting lucky, and that's definitely part of it.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't have aligned if you hadn't done everything leading up to that moment to be able to do all of that immediately.
Yes,
right?
and that is.
If you didn't know to get that pre-approval, if you didn't have the funds already, if you didn't know your target market, if you didn't know your budget, if you didn't know the area that it was in, right, and couldn't make all these connections immediately, like, yes, it was lucky, and yes, it was fortuitous and a blessing.
Yeah.
But only because you had everything else ready to be able to jump on that opportunity.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And that's a great observation, because yes, exactly that, where sometimes there is like an element of luck, but then there's also just hard work and preparation.
Yeah.
I used to be a very serious athlete, and I always had this coach that's
Yeah, dude, you're still jacked. You're good.
trying. But he always said there's never bad weather, there's just bad preparation for weather.
Yeah.
I was a competitive hiker, and so, you know, some days we were trained a couple places in the US, and, you know, it'd be raining, you know, just downpouring, or winds, you know, waves are going sideways, and, you know, coach still makes us go out there and paddle, because again, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad preparation.
Yeah, I've heard the same version of that, where it's like, no bad weather, just bad clothes.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like humans can be in any weather dang near about. It's just whether or not you brought the right clothing for it.
So yeah, to tie it back in, exactly. It's like, you just have to sometimes just take that next step. You don't know if it's the correct thing to do.
Yep.
But you have to put, it's like an educated guess, right? You do your research, you talk to people, right? You set aside that, you know, that money every month or whatever.
Yep.
And it's compounding. Like, eventually something will work, right? And you might take a wrong turn here or there, but more or less, you know what the goal is and what you're trying to obtain. So for me, like I said, like, I knew since college, like, home ownership was always a goal for me. How do I get there? Well, you know, I got to do my research. I got to talk to people. I got to figure out all these things in between to get there, right? And slow and steady. Again, slow and steady will win the race. So it's not like it's just a house will appear, you know, out of the sky. That's like
And
a
now,
perfect deal for you.
Yeah. And now what, 3-4 years later, 3?
It's about 3 now. Yeah.
3? Yeah. You're eyeballing another property already?
Hopefully. I mean,
Let's go.
things
dude.
are shifting around. And,
28 and onto your second property coming soon.
yeah. So things are,
If that's the best use for your money, right?
exactly. And that's what I'm trying to think is, like, you know, do I rent this out? And then do I move somewhere else?
Yep.
You know, and just like rent out a property that's below my market, cash flow this for a little bit.
So we're going to take a short beer break, and also because our friend's calling us, so we'll be right back.
Fair.
But when we come back, we need to dig more into best use of your money going forward and your future plans. Dude, this one's brutal. This is a 9.4.
Yeah, I have that one. It's a little sneaky on you.
I like it. Sneaky. Salud times 2. I already opened mine. Pretend I made a noise. Okay. We left off on future Johnny.
Yeah.
All right, dude, you got your first property. You're a charge nurse.
Yeah.
You got a lump of money that's invested or cash or whatever, and you're looking to the future.
Yeah.
What's your investing time horizon here? Have you thought about that? Is it like 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah. And this is like this is an interesting point, because, like, in an irresponsible way, I have not taken advantage of my employer's, like, traditional retirement.
Oh, yeah. Dude, I'm honestly not a huge fan of 401ks either, other than like the matching, which there's definitely a case to be made there. But short of that,
Yeah, I got some matching. I do a little bit of that, but I haven't taken full advantage. It's not the greatest retirement plan, but I mentioned that because, essentially I have all my money tied up in stocks, like my savings, because I just want to maximize that money.
Yep.
So that when there is an opportunity to buy again, and like between having the income to have another mortgage and move out of my place and all that, I'm essentially ready to do it. So yeah, I think a second property is in the books at some point. And
you're comfortable with that. You like real estate. You're more familiar with it now. Like, you like that as an investment vehicle?
I do like it as an investment vehicle. And yes, there's a lot of things changing right now, you know, with our country when it comes to real estate. And
dude, even San Diego, like most of the beach coastal areas now are just rentals. A lot of them used to be neighborhoods growing up where people would live, but now they're so expensive that they can only be rentals. But keep going. You like real estate?
Yeah, I do like real estate, and I do question, like, the efficacy of people being able to afford and buy into this market.
Yeah.
But if you are able to do so, the thing is that there's always going to be people that need to rent.
Yeah.
Because San Diego is a popular city to live in, and the population.
Double check. Make sure it's actually recording, because I'm full of shit.
Yeah.
Yep, totally good. Yeah, so you're a big fan of San Diego real estate?
Yeah, the population is only getting bigger. So if you can buy into the market and, maybe sit on it for a year or two, get some tenants until you fully rent it out and,
Yep.
Move on to the next endeavor. I think that is of my goals, to have like a few properties under my belt, keep doing my nursing thing, and maybe look into a business down the road of some sort.
Of your own.
Of my own, yeah.
Looking to emulate your father.
Yes, and then that's another thing. So my father was a nurse, but he ultimately, as his family back home did, is a businessman himself.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked about my mother, who did the traditional work, 15, 20 years in a good company, earned that great pension, all that stuff. But my father kind of blazed his own path, made his own assets, and acquired his own wealth in a entrepreneurial way, I guess you say. So I see the value of both.
Yeah.
Both have their pros and cons. So I would like to be somewhere in between.
Somewhere in between.
Somewhere in between, yeah. But we will see. Yeah, we will see. So as of now, essentially, keep doing my role in the emergency department. I have sent out applications to different endeavors. One is a different skill set of nursing. Another is more managerial.
Yeah.
Because I've been in my spot for about 3 years now. And I think that's about the time where it is good to look on to the next stepping stone, as I'm unrestricted and have a lot of freedom. So we will see.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, thinking's good, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been really cool seeing you forge your own path through all of this, because I feel like we were similar people, certainly in, high school, more so in college.
Yeah.
But as time goes on, we've become more similar, despite having had very different career paths. I think our investment analysis is usually pretty similar.
Pretty similar, yeah.
But both sons of immigrants, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we really get it, especially like Mexican and Filipino.
Yeah.
I'd argue Mexicans are the Filipinos of the Americas, and likewise Filipinos are the Mexicans of Southeast Asia, for sure.
I would definitely agree with that.
So, we've grown up together, and it's been really awesome. So it's just been super cool to see what you've been up to and how you've been doing it.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch on, is there anything you really wish you would have done differently, or advice that you could give, say Johnny just coming out of nursing school, or even before he was in nursing school? Like, what should you have valued more or less or
differently? It's a good question. I will say this. So there is a price to pay with, home ownership and financial freedom and all that. You have to be very methodical in how you allocate your money for leisure, I guess you can say. And I've made the best of my leisure, right? I've been able to explore California up and down, a lot of road trips, a lot of surfing trips, a lot of camping trips. But what I have liked to done more so was travel internationally. Yeah, I think if anything, it's a big world out there.
Yeah.
And to be exposed to different cultures. Every time I go international, I think there's a lot of value in being exposed to that and seeing how the rest of the world is. So I would say to previous Johnny that it would have been nice to travel internationally more during college and all that, especially seeing you. And I have a couple other close friends that have traveled a lot, like their college and, recent postgraduate years where, I was like, man, that is, like financial security and all that's great, but exposure to, the world and life experiences is also of great value.
100%. And you'd be surprised how much the two blend. Like the experience that you come back with
exactly.
On your travels heavily influence your financial decisions.
Mm-hmm.
I just spent a month, 35 days in Japan this last October. And it's funny, man. I came back with like even more distaste for things, for stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
material.
I used to be such a huge watch guy, and I still am. And I like things, cars and other stuff, insofar as it's still functionally different. Like I love my G-Shock. It's an awesome watch.
Yeah.
But nice things for the sake of them being nice. I have lost that now, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I've just come to value experiences and my friends and family far more.
Yeah, exactly. And, somewhere in between all this, quest for financial freedom and stability and whatnot is, it's a blend. Like, it's like,
Yeah. Cause it's like, why are you doing all
why are you
that?
doing this? Yeah. Yeah. Why am I doing all this?
Yeah.
Ultimately, why I'm doing all this is I hope to have a family to be able to provide for them and have, like a stable way of life, essentially. Money is a tool, right? And if you could give a better life to, those around you. And that includes like my direct family as well as hopefully my future family. But
taking care of your parents when they're old.
exactly. My parents, my siblings, and then as well as hopefully future wife and kids and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's a tool. And that's why I work so hard, is in that hope that there's that. But yeah, no, it's nice to also just live, like a good life, like, of course, like, day in, day out, taking care of very, very sick people who need things, but
living a moral life. We didn't really talk about it, but we're both very Catholic.
Yeah.
So
Yes, this is true.
The moral basis.
The moral basis
for us.
Yeah. The moral weight of this all is, just giving and caring and
caring for humans.
There's a balance of like, you can't just be so infatuated with money.
Yeah.
And status.
Yep.
There's a balance, right?
Yeah.
Like and that's what I love about nursing, is that it's like every day I come in with purpose, like taking care of people, and there's hard shifts where I forget about that sometimes, but I really do try to emulate that every time I'm at work. I'm like, this is what Jesus would do.
Yeah.
He would take care of these people who are
sick.
Sometimes
you tell me some of these stories, man, and it's like, it's tough enough to go through that type of work, let alone when you're actually empathetic towards the people and you genuinely care about them. Because one thing's being able to put up a professional wall, right?
Yeah.
And kind of becoming jaded to the situation, which I'd argue certain ER doctors, when you're doing like those super risky surgeries, some of that's needed. You can't like be super connected to the person because you do end up losing so many people.
Yeah.
But that doesn't take away from,
statement,
the moral perspective of, if you can care about these people as you're caring for them, right, you should. But that's hard when it's hard day after day, and it's a tough area of the city, and you're working in the ER, and and so I've always really admired that about you, because my work doesn't carry anywhere near the emotional weight, obviously. So I don't have to give that much emotional bandwidth, and I can keep it reserved. But I know with you, sometimes you tell me, it's just been a really hard 4 days. Like I just can't. Like I just need to go nap and read and go camp on the coastline or whatever else you do to recharge, or go sailing.
Or go sailing. Yeah. Thankfully, yeah. But it can be a hard line of work. It's very rewarding. I do think that. My bandwidth can be stretched thin, but I do try to bring it back to my faith of like, this is what I'm here for. I'm here to take care of people. This is what Jesus would do. All those great things. But it's hard. I work with a doctor that says a lot of times, I have a great appreciation for. He's like, you just got to do what's right sometimes. It might not what the hospital policy is, mind you.
Yeah.
But really though, like at the end of the day, we're taking care of humans. We got to do what's right. And that goes to every scale, sure. Like I'm in an environment where it does sometimes involve people's lives. But I think on the day to day, when you're conversing with people and carrying out your life, like, what is the right thing to do right now? Does that person need someone to check on them right now? Do they need help, walking across the street? Like all these things about money that we talk about is great, and it's a tool. But it only goes so far if your heart is not in the right place.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy to tell when somebody's chasing money for the wrong reason, right? There's people that chase it for the security for them, for their family, for their friends.
Right.
They like the choice that it brings, right? And being able to buy back their time, which is what I think a lot of us talk about when we talk about financial freedom. It's like having the time. Yeah. We're hanging out here on the boat, and we started at like 4, right? On, what is it? Thursday today? Wednesday?
Yeah, today's Thursday. Yeah.
Today's Thursday already.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So we're here on a Thursday, right? At 4, being able to hang around on the boat, and we're about to go sailing with our other friend, Robbie. But Not a lot of people can do that. You, because you've taken, what is this, 16 days off now?
This is 16 days off,
right?
Which is,
Took a lot of, you took some vacation, but it's also just how you organize your schedule, and you got a lot of time off for your birthday and the rest of it.
That's PTO. That's PTO.
And,
yes,
you know, with my work right now, it's on and off, but I can generally schedule most things. So it's just been a huge blessing to have this time. Like a lot of people didn't even get this time at 28 to be able to go and have a conversation with their best friend and talk through some stuff. So
exactly. So, you know, and that's a great point you bring up too, is like, aside from family and, you know, and as a tool just for, you know, comfort and lifestyle, a bigger thing is time. You know, I mean, well, intertwined, but time, I think, is the most valuable asset in today's modern age, right?
Yeah.
Sure, we have a lot of it, but how do you maximize that? Because, you know, life's not very long and time is very valuable.
Well, I find that people that think they have a lot of it end up by the older years realizing they didn't have enough.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, oh, I got a lot of time. And then you blink and it's been 10 years and you're in the same spot.
And using that time very valuably, you know, with your family.
Which goes to experiences, right?
Doing things you enjoy, love, right? You know, giving it back to people that need that time.
Doing actual things instead of just owning stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is much more fulfilling than, having a nice watch or a nice boat.
And meaningful. Like I've always had my dreams of starting a philanthropic investment fund.
Yeah, sure.
Which I still want to do. I just need to make sure me and my future kids' finances are covered first. But
yeah, sure.
There's, you know, I've always had dreams of like applying my skill set and my interests into directly helping people.
Yes.
Not for profit at that point.
Yeah, not for profit. Yeah. Yeah.
But I also need to prepare, like you said, and like how you're focusing on for, I'm not married yet, but God willing one day.
Right.
Wife and kids. And I don't want just one kid. I want a lot. So priorities are priorities, but yeah, man, helping people, like, it's definitely what's the most fulfilling.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. As much as you can. And it's a confusing world because, you know, we live in a culture that is very, focused on independence.
Yeah.
And, I think that is, not to get too, we're sidebarring a little bit, but not to get too much into it, but I think that's been a big setback in our culture is the degradation of like the nuclear family.
Valuing independence at the cost of like community cohesion.
Yeah, exactly. Like, cause, you know, at the end of the day, humans are very much tribal people.
Yeah.
Like, you know, forget about religion, all that stuff for a minute, you know, as we mentioned, like, yes, we're Catholics and all that, but, what is your tribe at the end of the day? Cause we are like humanistic, just very
Who can you count on?
Tribal people. And, I think unfortunately our culture has degraded that a good amount where it's like, you know, I see it's me and my own a lot.
A lot of people feeling isolated.
Yeah, isolated. And there's a lot of isolation. There's a lot of anxiety and depression. And there's more to that than just like, sure, maybe family.
Yeah, that's a conversation for another day too, with like what you see in the hospital.
That's a whole other thing. But, you know, just the skyrocketing rates in young people about, you know, anxiety, depression, isolation, all that stuff, especially in young men, is really alarming, and something that we should pay attention to. Absolutely. So again, like it's a blend. Like you could chase all this money, and do all these career things, but if you're just so empty inside at the end of the day, what is it for? You know, so do it with a purpose, I think is what we're saying.
Yeah,
really.
Set your foundation.
Set your foundation, and it's a balance, right? Like go on the sailing trip, you know, go take
our sailing trip down to Coronado.
Go on the hike, you know, like go to the trip to Japan for a month, you know, like those are things that you probably will not regret. But you have to be a little bit financially responsible about that, and still stay true.
Don't take out credit card debt to go traveling, guys.
Exactly.
Don't do it.
No, we're not advising.
We're not advocating for that.
So, you know,
is there anything you want to leave the viewers with? Something you want to tell them? Stay sick.
Stay sick. No, not in particular. I think just like in summation, just talking about, you know, slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah, I was going to go back to that. That's like a catchphrase.
Yeah, slow and steady, compounding interest, and just putting in the work in, put the skin in the game, right?
Yeah.
If you want something, set the purpose, and then in between, like let all the check boxes be checked along the way, I guess you can say. Like,
Yeah, that's one thing neither
you
you
can't
nor
just, you have to have a true north, essentially.
yeah, neither you nor I had to be taught the value of hard work. I feel like our families did a really good job with that.
Yes. And it comes with conversation. It comes with research. It comes with what is important to you, right? We all have different goals at the end of the day. And for you and me, yes, like family has set that for a lot of us, but there's something to say, like to find your own goals,
Yep.
your own purpose, your own path.
100%.
Set it and go after it. But again, you're gonna have to put hard work. It's compounding interest. Slow and steady wins the race. You'll get there, but you have to put time and the effort into making it happen.
Yeah, you gotta actually try.
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. Johnny, as always, an absolute pleasure. Let's go sail with Robbie, and we'll see all of you later.